Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to From Panic to Peace. Good to have you here today. My name is Craig Konchak, and I am the director of the counseling department at North Cobb Christian School. And these lovely ladies to my right are the bones and muscle of this program, I assure you. They are some amazing ladies that are going to help us today with our presentation for you guys today. I want to say a word of thanks to Holbrook. And they are the ladies that are out there in the lobby that have provided you with the biscuits and the breakfast and all that. Could you give them a round of applause right now? Appreciate Holbrook and just their willingness to participate. They are an active older adult community, 55 and over, as I understand it, that has decided to, and that doesn't, of course it doesn't include any of us in this room. Surely we have 20 years before we're there. But we appreciate their desire to push into North Cobb Christian School to help us out and to make you all comfortable today. So very thankful for that. Exciting day ahead, and I'd like to open us up in a word of prayer, and let's just ask the Lord to protect our children and to give us peace of mind as we go into our time together. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we love you today, and we thank you for opportunities like these where we can come together as an NCCS family and we can talk as a family. Father, we know that the struggles that we're dealing with greatly impact how we help our children navigate this world. And I just pray right now that this would be a meaningful time for us to be able to talk, to share, to ask questions. Ultimately, Father, I pray that everything that is done would glorify you, and that the conclusions that we come to would have your fingerprint all over them. So bless us and be with us at this time. It's in Christ's name we ask these things. Amen. Good stuff, good stuff. Well, welcome everybody. I want you to know that I'm all caught up today. Last night, I spent a couple extra hours after pole vault practice that ended about 8:30, watching It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Mr. Rogers. And so my heart is set for what we're going to do today. How many of you guys remember him? You want to sing it with me? It's a beautiful... No, I'm just kidding. So you're ready to do it! That's what's so awesome about you guys. And the sad part is that you thought I was actually going to sing it with you. But so cool to have people that interact with our kids on a daily basis, that invest in their life, and that's what I have up here. I've got 3 female Mr. Rogers that work with our kids every day and try to help them to see that it's a beautiful day. And don't we need a beautiful day in the neighborhood? Good Lord, whether it's the political weather or whether it's just the weather we've got outside, everything's been so crazy as of late. But it's good to have you guys. I want you to take a moment right now. And I know that, and trust me, Mrs. Strange is standing there at the back of the room. We just got back from a conference, and one of the things that's extremely difficult, I don't care if you've done this for your whole life, it's just taking the time to talk to your neighbor. Because sometimes, now I know many of you don't have a problem with that, of course, but and just to have valuable discussion and whatnot. I want you to identify for me, what's one characteristic that you think is important for all of our kids to have while they're in school? It's something that you want them to learn, or something that you want them to have, or something that you want them to be. One important characteristic, take 30 seconds, ready to go.
Resilience.
With your table, I'm sorry. And then we're gonna come back. I'm gonna get you. Just talk to your neighbors for 30 seconds.
Say kindness.
Inside ourselves.
Of course, those of us in middle school probably spit out in high school or could spit out different words. We have that conversation all the time.
Yeah, awareness of others.
Okay, ready, stop. Let's start over here. Table 1. Give me, shoot a couple at me. Confidence, acceptance, tolerance, kindness, empathy.
Empathy. That was hard.
Ooh, got a story. What else?
Not Brazilians.
Brilliant. Respect. Ooh. Of all of the things that we just mentioned, and schools are supposed to be a place where kids come and learn, right? In order to open that door of learning, what's the most important thing that we can do as a school? We've got to make them joyful. They've got to have joy. And I think that as we begin with the end in mind, one of the biggest obstacles that we have to perpetuating this idea of joy is anxiety and panic and stress. And so much of that, we're going to talk about how we can stop that, how we can curb that, what we can do in order as families to create this positive environment for them that allow them to experience that joy. And one of the things that both Megan and I understand, and Wendy, the lower school principal, we understand, is that we have to be dedicated to creating an environment of joy. Because if we don't, then they're slogging through learning. And that's not something that we want them to do. It just seems like there's this giant chasm between what we're trying to accomplish, what psychologists are saying right now about how to deal with anxiety, and what culture is saying about dealing with anxiety. We're going to talk about that here today. But first, we've got our friendly arts director up in, I don't know how friendly he is, but Matthew Hendricks up in the booth. He's going to throw a video up on the screen for you, and then we're going to get started. Sorry, third slide. Oh, I skipped a slide, and I apologize for that. And here's our biblical integration for today, okay? Psalms 91:4 says, "He will cover you with his feathers, he will shelter you with his wings. His faithful promises are your armor and protection." If there was a message that we could give to our kids on a daily basis, it would be this. And that's one of the things, and that's one of the benefits of being here at North Cobb Christian School, plug, is the fact that we have an opportunity on a daily basis to help them see the world through this biblical lens and have that biblical worldview. There is zero, and I've said this before, that you will be able to do, I shouldn't say zero, it's more than zero, between technology, social media, and all those other things that you have no control of outside of your direct interaction with your kid that are going to interfere with that biblical worldview. That's why the best thing we can do is to help them to guard their heart. Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything that you do flows from it. Well, it's all of this. It's understanding that they have to have those glasses, that filter that they can see this world through, that's going to help them to navigate the ugliness of it. Okay? And now for the funny. Go ahead. Next slide. Oh, there's facts. There you go.
Oh no.
Click on it again. Click on it.
Yeah.
You don't have to go. This was a really funny video, folks. This was going to get you set up. I apologize. There we go. Thank you, sir.
Right. Supposed to be laughing.
Why is it muted? Oh gosh.
Thank you.
Oh, where's the teenager?
There we go.
What is her name? I kept her thing on Facebook.
There's no sound.
Jason's juggling the jingle.
You're giving him anxiety.
Matthew, I'm feeling relaxed.
If only we had a teenager.
Let's make up the script as it goes.
I know.
Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah, it's okay.
We got our laughter out. We'll go together.
Okay, so the next slide is
Now he's turned off your microphone.
it's all good. I'll just talk loudly if you can hear me.
Hello. Okay.
So we are going to talk about a little bit of facts so that we can kind of understand. It's kind of tiny writing. So anxiety affects 1 in 8 children. The median age of the onset of anxiety is 6 years old. By age 6, girls' anxiety rates are twice as high than boys. And 80% of children with diagnosable anxiety disorder are not receiving treatment. And this is from the childinmind.org. So just some ideas for you to see how prevalent the problem is and what our kids are experiencing. Those are some of the facts. And so I wanted to share with you the next slide. It shows some of the symptoms of anxiety. And a lot of people think that it's just restricted to cognitive, but it actually can be physical. You can experience headaches, you can experience stomach aches, and it can be all just anxiety related and not really, something wrong or somebody's sick. Trembling, sleeplessness or sleeping, somatic complaints like we discussed. And then there can be behavioral symptoms as well. Irritability, anger, those can be symptoms of anxiety. Social withdrawal, avoiding work or failure to complete their work. Sometimes even just trying to hide or cover themselves with hoods. And perfectionism is also something that I've seen, like anxiety manifests as perfectionism. Cognitive, that would be the excessive worrying and the trouble concentrating. Because a lot of times when we're activated and worry, then we don't think logically with our prefrontal cortex, and it causes us to have trouble concentrating, remembering problems, being overly critical of ourselves, and having difficulties with memory. Like I said, solving problems can become a challenge. So now we have a video on the next slide, which I am hoping works. It's really great for teaching us the physiological responses in our bodies to stress, and understanding what happens in our bodies helps to understand how we can solve the problem.
I got bad news for you.
Okay, so we just taught this in my psychology class, so we're just going to go over it really quick.
Wait, hold on.
Are you good? Okay.
Well, I
Because
found it on YouTube. Let me see if I got sound.
all right, we'll see. Because cute animation or me talking, either way.
They're one of the same.
I mean, I could do the jogging from the saber tooth. I'll give you a second.
I don't know what's happening. I'm not getting sound from the computer. Oh, because I'm recording this. That's fine.
Okay.
I can put it up while you're talking, though.
Okay, that's fine. So the basic idea is when we are stressed, which is anything that we view as challenging or threatening. So in the video, it shows like we used to have to worry about things like a saber-toothed tiger. In my class that I talk about a trip that we did up to Alaska where we were with the grizzly bears, and like that feeling of coming around a corner and seeing a sleeping bear. Like that's anxiety inducing, as it should be, right? And so, yes, missing a step on the stair, finding out that now I'm going to speak to all of you when a video was going to do it for me. That's all anxiety inducing, right? So what happens in our body when that happens? Our sympathetic nervous system is designed to kick in, right? Your heart rate increases, your digestion slows, your breathing increases, your pupils dilate, like all that fight, flight, or freeze stuff kicks in. Your mind is racing of the next step. And the way that God designed our bodies, there's this amazing thing called your parasympathetic nervous system, which is designed to balance that out, right? So you have your moment of stress and anxiety, that moment passes, either the challenge has been met, the threat is gone, we've passed the bear, I'm done speaking, whatever, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and it balances our body. But where we run into trouble is when we're constantly kicking in that sympathetic nervous system. And there's a place for it, a natural, healthy place for it. But what happens when that system is constantly running? When your mind is like a ticker tape, right? You can't stop and calm your body systems down to then be able to think and process what is actually going on and come up with a solution. So when we get to some of the tips and tricks, a lot of them have to do with regulating that system. So I came home from work last semester one day, and my husband asked me how my day was, and I said, I spent a lot of time in my office breathing. And he was like, I'm so glad that you're still breathing. But didn't go into it with him. What I was referring to is with students, to calm that sympathetic nervous system down so then we can process, okay, why did it kick in the first place? But while it's active, you are not stopping to think through the problem, right? We have to deal with the physiology first, so then we can process cognitively why we got to where we got. All right.
We can go to the wheel, slide 7. Okay, so yeah, they have it. So the Wheel of Wellness, you'll find it on your table, an empty one that we're going to work on, but we also wanted to explain what that means. So we are multidimensional. There are lots of parts of us. The spiritual, you'll see there are 8 categories: spiritual, financial, social, and all of it that makes up the totality, the wholeness of who we are. And so the idea of the Wheel of Wellness is that to support our emotional health, then we need to kind of evaluate where we are. And it's also like a car wheel. So if something were to happen to one of the areas of wellness, it would impact all of the areas. So something negatively impacting one area would also negatively has the potential to impact the other areas in a negative way. But also the opposite is also true, that if you are to strengthen one area, then you strengthen all of the other areas. So what I'd like for us to do is on the page that has, the colorful page with what we're talking about, the second page will show you kind of the 8 dimensions of wellness. If you can find that, there's a colorful page and then there's a page with the wheel. And they're on one side it says for adults, on one side it says for kids. And so the idea is that we evaluate how we're doing with our wellness, because what we model our kids is what they learn. So we're always evaluating how we're doing so that we can teach that to our kids, right? And that process. So if we could take a look for a minute and use your pens, you can use the colorful Wheel of Wellness. Jump down. Looks like this. And we're going to take a moment to rate ourselves. So 0 would be you don't feel strong at all in that area, and 10 would be you feel like you're at your maximum in that area.
Like, would you say 10 would be positive or a negative?
Positive. Positive.
So think of it like filling up a tire, right? When it's full and to proper capacity, it's ready to roll. That's what you want to think of. So where are your areas where you're strong and you feel like you're hitting it? And where are the areas where you feel like, man, I need to work on this a little bit?
Thank
Yeah, we're good.
I'm a little worried about looking at the wheel at this table. You got a lot of flat spots? Oh. Yeah.
You're seeing a mother. Sheet to show you what each one kind of can do. This is for adults, right?
Oh, I'm looking at my wheel drives a lot like Preston.
I don't read those, but I think I get it.
You guys cheating over here and giving yourself large numbers in.
Yeah, I don't even want to read that one. All this water is
Hey, in a hospital, a flat line means nothing. Or a bullseye, I should say. You guys are archery targets.
It gives you a pH thing, but something about static balance, but it was like coffee is a negative one, but prayer is a positive two. It's like the mental balance. Yes, and then you're positive, and you're net one. You're net positive. Exactly. So we basically have to pray.
Your dad said that.
Exactly.
Let's talk about Shannon, but I am Shannon. You're like, we're getting
Okay, well, we might not be finished, probably not. That's a lot of self-reflecting and reading. But I think the idea is that wellness is very multidimensional, and that feeling well emotionally also has to do with how much sleep you're getting, or if you're eating well, if you're taking the time. And as a mom, I know that we were talking about that at the other table. I know it's really challenging to get those things done, and sometimes there's guilt associated with taking the time to take care of ourselves, right? But this idea that you can't pour from an empty cup, right? That it's really important to recharge, to be able to sleep, to be able to exercise, and maybe not feel so guilty for doing those things, because those things are what makes us well and make us operate as a good mom, as a good employee. You really have to have that balance, like balancing a car tire. And so also when we model that, then we teach that to our kids. And so there are some recommendations, and I encourage you to look at that for yourself, for your wellness, but also try it out with your kids. We have extra copies of the wheel in the back. Just kind of see where they are and see what that looks like for them, so that we can support them emotionally.
All right, I was walking around and I was looking at some of your wheels, and I noticed that many of you have more of an archery target than a wheel there at the center. It's not, the goal's not the bullseye, folks, just so you know. But when we think about health, and as we think about overcoming anxiety and panic and whatnot, obviously an important part of that is how we take care of our bodies, which is our next slide. I want you to take some time right now to think through with your we call this our hi neighbor activity. Just say hi neighbor, and then talk about a way that you can take care of your body that's positive. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Ready? Go.
We're gonna go to Planet Fitness. This is only $22.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 30 seconds. So, table one, what are you saying? Shout them out. What do you got? Exercise, yes.
Exercise.
Exercise.
Saying no.
Sleep.
Ooh, okay, I like that one.
Saying no to more things.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh man, way to put a damper on it. That's right.
We came up with sleep too. So
That's
I mean,
absolute
we're
truth,
all
though.
there.
I like that you came up with that as well. What did you guys have
Exactly.
at this table?
Sleep and walking.
Sleep. We got some doctors in the house today. I won't tell you where they are. But what's the one that we heard the most of? I'd say sleep. Here's a question for you, lower school. Raise your hand, lower school parents. All right, very good. How many hours worth of sleep do your kids need? Do you think optimum, to be at their optimum? If we could have it our way, how many hours of sleep? Okay, optimum is 11. I heard it said over here somewhere. All right, middle school parents, raise your hand. Heads up, there you go. How many hours would you say? Optimum. That's exactly right, 10. And then upper school parents, what would you say? Yes. What? You'd think with all this anxiety and the stress and whatnot that they would need more, but 9 hours is what they're going to need. But think about how much they actually have. Isn't that a sad thought? As an adult, I thought about how much I have last night. Hey, how many of you have iPhones? Take your iPhones out with me. You got your iPhones out? I don't have my phone. Oh, yeah, I do. It's in my phone. All right, take your iPhones out. A little exercise right here. Are you familiar with the clock app? Does everybody have their clock app? If you have an iPhone, this is the only one that I can explain. Well, there is something on here that says bedtime that you can click when you get to your clock app. You can click on the bedtime icon. Do you see it there along the bottom? It's world clock, alarm, bedtime, stopwatch. Click on that. For some of you, this might be the first time you've ever seen it. You can put in your bedtime as well as your wake up there. And then when you click on it, it'll actually, if you click on the wake up, it'll actually show you this bar. It looks like that. Can you see that from where you are? I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm going to hop down. But it's going to tell you whether or not you're making your optimum time by the time you go to bed, etc. And then it'll set this beautiful alarm. As a matter of fact, there's an alarm on here that's much better than the car horn that I have. I don't know. It just kind of plays very softly as I wake up in the morning. And then all of a sudden it gets a little bit louder. And then it gets a little louder. And I said, Craig, get out of bed. But that's an awesome little feature that I don't know if you guys were aware of. So here's what we're looking for. We're looking for optimum performance. And what if I told you that there was a magic... Oh, see, that's why we love you so much, brother. Thank you for putting that up there. We want them to perform optimally. If I could tell you I had a magic bullet that would allow them to think better, that would allow them to learn better, that allow them to conceptualize better, that allow them to memorize better, be more creative, and overcome difficult obstacles. If I told you there was a magic bullet that did all those things, you know what it is? It's sleep. How many of you can right now, to yourself, rate yourself, don't tell anybody, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 as to how well you protect their sleep, their magic bullet. Think about that for 10 seconds. 10 is good, 1 is not so good. But here's the question, here's the thing. Actually, 1 is terrible. Obstacles that we have that get in the way. Think through some of those things. Take 10 seconds. Think of what the obstacles are that get in the way of our sleep and monitoring or protecting that sleep. We're gonna go there, I promise. It's funny because Megan and I were, I don't know if she was in the same workshop that I was in. Yes, she was, because it was the, what was his name? John Smith? The gentleman that led? David Smith. David Smith. He actually said that homework is something that can tear families apart.
Oh yeah, amen.
Because it's not good. But guess what? He didn't say take homework away. He said integrate parents in the homework process. Give them an opportunity. And here's what I got to tell you. From time to time, my own kids come home and they bring home that essential question that the teacher had for that day. And the teacher says, I want you to take that home at the dinner table. I want you to have that conversation. 40 minutes into it, and most of the time it turns into a debate. We just reflected on the fact that we just spent 40 minutes doing homework. And I was a part of it. And we were engaged, and we were a family. And they weren't just apart and away from me, up in their room doing their thing for 2 hours. Such a big deal, and I think that we need to protect that. Let's talk about technology. That's an obstacle, because at the end of the day, what are they doing? a lot, that's why in the last, was it the last? Yes, I believe it was, that the last Coffee with Counselors, that we're saying that technology needs to be in your room charging. It doesn't need to be in their room. There's an author that I get a lot of information with. I'm going to give you her name so you can look her up. Her name is Lisa Damour, Dr. Lisa Damour. She's a clinical psychologist. And she said, nothing good can come from a room where technology is. And sleep is supposed to be Damour, D-A-M-O-U-R. Dr. Lisa Damour. You got to take the technology out of the classroom, because all it becomes is, it just becomes that obstacle that's keeping them from doing what they need to be doing, and that is sleeping. It's just one other thing that takes them away. All right, I gotta go on to the next slide. Oh, boom. Thank you so much, brother. You're awesome. All right, the next slide.
So, are we going to go back to books for textbooks?
Say that again?
Are we going to go back to textbooks?
Somebody get her out of here. Where's
You just said that you need to take all technology out of the classroom. I think you meant bedroom, but you said classroom.
Okay. I said classroom. I'm out.
It's better with a book.
There's a ton of research out there that we actually had a good conversation about that. And one of the things that we need to do if we're using technology to help with learning gains is we need to use it in the right way. And so that's why we do limit the amount of technology that they interact with in the classroom. That's the expectation that we have to start, but we have to reflect. We have to self-reflect. We have to be vulnerable and be able to answer questions like that. Are we using them too much? But the kind of technology that I'm talking about right now is the technology that sits in the room that keeps them from sleeping and getting the amount of rest that they need. And that's the important piece. All right, sorry. 2 types of stress. Eustress. What's the other type? I know it says bad stress on the screen. Distress. And eustress is the good stress. And here, you know, at the very beginning, we talked about this chasm that exists so often between psychologists and culture. Psychologists would say that it's okay to have anxiety. Guys, think about when we grew up. Anxiety wasn't what it is today. All of a sudden, it's this taboo word that we're dealing with, and we're trying to navigate it so badly. And here's the truth. If we don't talk about stress positively, we can perpetuate it in our kids. If everything we're saying at home is stress is negative, 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 then all of a sudden we're gonna grow up this culture of kids that have zero backbone and zero ability to deal with it. That's why so many of you middle school parents have heard me talk on grit and their ability to respond in the midst of difficult situations. So important. Young people are feeling stressed about being stressed. And and we've got to contribute to that. Think about this. Is stress a bad thing when you're in the weight room? How much stress do you put on your muscles in a weight room? The idea is you put a lot of stress on them. So that what? You can build those muscles. But what do you need that actually grows muscle? And recovery. If all you did was work that muscle out, that brain, and all you're doing is 16 hours a day, you're just working that muscle, and you're not giving them that time to recover. That's where they're gonna. So you have to create those moments. You have to create this moment. So Damour, the psychologist, said, I create, even for myself, I have these like peanut M&M breaks. 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off. 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off as she's doing her work. And I'll have the peanuts in another room, so I have to leave. So I'm not just eating while I'm doing my work. Smart. Just think of interesting ways that you guys can be creative about giving them those breaks. Okay, I'm taking your phone away. Give me your phone. Okay, then I'll give you 5 minutes to be on your phone in the midst of those. Just so that they have those little breaks in there.
Timers work great on the table. We should do that. Just run around the table.
No, absolutely. But that whole idea of stress is getting in the way, and it's so we have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to not talk bad about the distress, because at the end of the day, the distress is what gives them the grit that's going to allow them to compete, that's going to allow them to not the distress, the the way that they attack stress is going to be what allows them to navigate this world. And they can't walk away from problems all the time.
I'm going to add a few practical examples. So for example, like in lower school, they're learning independence and autonomy. And sometimes it's not easy. Like we ask them to fold their clothes and they'll wad them up, and that's how they do it. And there's a lot of work and effort and patience it takes to teach a kid how to do things on their own. I get it, it's a challenge. But a lot of times that experiencing that stress, carrying their backpack, walking into class by themselves, putting away their own things, those are all things that are learning experiences. Dealing with conflict with friends, you monitor that, you can help coach them through, but let them try to solve it on their own. Because what we see is a lot of times we feel like we want to come in and rescue them, and that's just a feeling because we love them so much, we want to protect them. And we do need to keep an eye on what's going on, but at the same time we want to be careful that we don't rob them of the experience of experiencing something and solving it on their own. There's such a confidence that comes from that. There's such an empowerment that comes from being able to solve our own problems. And they need to have these small challenges as they grow up, and they become bigger in intensity when they come into middle school and high school. So they know they have this track record of, okay, I experienced this, I was able to get through it, I solved it. And so we want to help them, but we want to have that balance. We're there for them, but they can also do it. And we don't want to send a message that we don't think that they can handle it on their own if we're always intervening and trying to fix it and solve it for them. So just being mindful of that.
Something difficult can be accomplished as long as they know that there's a payoff. There's got to be a payoff. They got to have a win. If they're not having a win, if they don't get to experience a win from time to time, then all they're doing is they're getting beat down with that, and that's what's difficult. So let's go to the next slide. Unhealthy coping is our next topic. I want you to think as a table group right now, just what are some ways that kids cope with stress in an unhealthy way? What are some ways that they cope with stress in an unhealthy way? Talk with your team about that. Take 30 seconds. Go.
Oh, yeah.
My kids go okay when they get stressed.
Do they?
That's awesome. And then they have like a couple of things that
Okay, good stuff. Table one, throw one out. Unhealthy coping mechanism. YouTube. Ooh, unhealthy. You guys.
Well, we said eating, anger.
Okay, good. Irritability. Back in the back over there.
Meltdowns.
Meltdowns. Meltdowns, wow. You guys want to know what the magic pill is for a meltdown? My mom's left hand. No, just kidding. I remember growing up, I always knew when she turned that ring around that here it comes. That was that visual cue. Craig, you better shut up. I like it. Good. Yes, ma'am. Yes. You guys.
Anger and withdrawal.
Anger, withdrawal.
Fear of failure, and then comparing themselves to social media, to Instagram.
That comparison stuff. That'll get you. Yeah.
Because everything's such an instant reward now that they're afraid to tackle anything difficult. That is, you got to grind it out. This is not going to be over in 5 minutes.
You're not going to learn it.
There might be 99 failures because, very few people, adults included, I think, that is a lost trait in our society.
So what we're doing by having this little meeting is we're developing a lot of life coaches that are going to be able to go back to their kids, hopefully, or have already been doing this and have been encouraging them through that and how to deal with that and how to survive that stress, because it is 99. A lot of it's going to be tough.
Well,
okay,
and
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say too, I mean, as it gets more severe, you're looking at self-harming, which is huge right now, and because of YouTube, because of all that, there's videos to show them how to self-harm.
you know, or drugs and alcohol. I mean, eventually a lot of kids dealing with stuff that they don't know how to deal with, and they start to just try to numb themselves because they can't deal with the emotion part of it.
Worked in a psychiatric hospital for a period of time, and I'd seen a lot of kids cutting, and there was different levels of that cutting, and some would just take a paper clip and they would just run it across their wrists or their some part of their skin, just to let them know that they're real. Am I real? Am I really existing? Am I dealing with this? And what an amazing thing that kids are so stressed out or so anxious that they would lead to that kind of a coping skill. Let's show just a screen on the screen some of the unhealthy coping mechanisms that are up there. Okay, there we go. Boom. It's a clickety-click. There you go. Avoidance, addictions to media, alcohol, drugs, and nicotine, compulsive spending, overeating and emotional eating. And then look at that, undereating. I mean, so many things that can trigger some of those things that kids are dealing with. I remember being in college and I had a roommate. He was the nicest guy you ever imagined. And he made one comment to a young lady about her weight one day, just said one thing. Then all of a sudden she's in the hospital struggling with bulimia. I mean, it's just so amazing. And then we can turn it off. This was before technology. Now they can't shut it off, and they're constantly getting bombarded with it. There it is right there. Your self-harm, aggression, lashing out, the catastrophizing, and then the parents that contribute to the catastrophizing. You're right, that's terrible. Let's talk about, and then, a lot of times that happens. A lot of times we find ourselves in sessions having conversations with parents about, how are you projecting to your child, and how are you contributing to this? You're the one that's supposed to be level-headed. But at the same time, you got to be healthy yourself if you expect to help your kids in a healthy way, right? So all of those things. Let's talk about some good, healthy coping mechanisms.
Okay, so I have 3 things that I wanted to talk about on this section, and part of it I already did, which was the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. The reason that I mention that is because when I'm talking to adults or I'm talking to children about stress and regulating stress, there's something powerful about knowing why. Why am I feeling this way? Why is my body doing this thing? Because in the moment it can feel very out of control. And so if they know why their body is doing what it's doing, then when we try to say, this is what we're gonna do, and this is why it works, especially for the older kids, because I'm in the upper school, they like to know the why, right? And so that helps. Okay, let's give that a try. So I wanted to start off with that for y'all. The other 2 things as we talk about healthy coping with stress, some of the things that we're talking about are preventative, right? We eat well, we exercise, get a lot of sleep. These are all preventative things. I wanted to mention one more, and that is scheduling. I can tell you how it plays out with my kiddos who are 1st grade through 8th grade, but I know that it gets more intense when they get into high school. At the beginning of the year, we take a calendar. It's a family calendar, and it's got the times on it, right? And I say, you are in school from 7:30, because that's when I get here, till 4. We come home, we have dinner, then how are we gonna spend our evenings? Thursday night, small group. Sunday is church. How are we gonna spend our evenings? So my 4 children at first started saying, oh, I wanna do this club, and I wanna do this thing, and I wanna be on this and that. And very quickly we saw our evenings fill up. Activities are great. Supporting your children's passions are fantastic. Then I say, so when are you gonna just play with all those toys that are in your room? When are we gonna hang out as a family? When are you gonna invite your friends over? Oh, okay. Well, I'll take this thing off and this thing off, but I really, really wanna do this. Okay, we can do that. And then suddenly you have a more manageable schedule as a family. Because I find that if my husband and I are just shuttling our children around and never spending time together or with them, I am super grumpy, and that passes down to my children, right? If we're constantly going. I recognize that there are seasons that are like that, especially if you have children who are in travel, anything, right? It gets really busy at times. But just as a family, to take a moment and pause and reflect and say, I don't have to be all things to all people. And your children will actually appreciate that rest. It's that recovery period after a stressful day, to just be able to go and calm down, have a minute to themselves to think and process and do that thing that they love, that favorite book or building with Legos or whatever it is. That's actually beneficial to them. So it's important to build in. I brought for you, just really quickly, my high schoolers love this because they're towards the end of the coloring, so I'm going to show you real quick. I brought my tape measure, right? I cut it off at 79 because apparently that's our current life expectancy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I said that. So, really quick, I have it colored. So you have your first 5 years of life before you're in school, right? Full time usually. This is a really fun time, right? We're learning to walk and crawl and play. I mean, think about a 5-year-old. Oh my goodness, they're so sweet. So this is your first 5 years, and then you come to school, right? And you're in school until you graduate, usually around 18. So this is your school life. And then you graduate, and you have all this ahead of you to make decisions and do the things, your dreams, your passions, live the life that God created for you, right? So they are in our homes for this very brief amount of time. And that thing that you're so worried about, that test, will you remember it down here? Probably not, right? That really hard moment in life, yeah, it's really hard, but it gives them perspective. It comes, and then you have all this amazing light ahead of you. And so it just helps remind them, like, this thing that you're experiencing, yeah, it's really rough. Right now, you're really concerned. Your grade dropped, and you no longer have that A. It's okay. We're still going to do our best, but in the grand scheme of life, does that define you? It doesn't. And sometimes they need to be reminded of that because they see their friends, some of whom are very successful, and some of our kids work really hard for their academic standing, for their athletic standing, for that first chair, whatever it is. Yes, pursue those passions, but in the grand scheme of life, there is so much more. We're getting ready to go into some coping mechanisms that we use when we are stressed out and we're in that moment. So we've done all the preventative things, we're healthy, and life still happens. We still have to take the SAT, or we still have to take that spelling test, or whatever it is that we have to do that's going to be a challenge. So how do we prepare ourselves for that? So I'm going to pass that on to Ms. Maudsley to share with you.
Thank you. Can we have that slide, because I cannot read that print anymore. I'm over 40. Distraction. This is obviously for both, for parents and for children. So I'm just going to give some personal examples. I love personal examples. So for me, I like to watch documentaries. And I had to give myself permission every once in a while to, not do the dishes and just sit in my bed and watch a documentary. And honestly, my husband this year had to kind of self-reflect. He has a very stressful job, coaching, but he found out, I love to read, and I haven't read a novel in like years. So he's been getting his favorite author, and I think he's read 3 novels this year, and it's just his time to relax. And I try to leave him alone when he's reading his book, because he won't talk till he's done with the whole book. And I recently read in a book, my daughter, she likes to laugh. And honestly, she's 13. There's not a whole lot I can let her watch to laugh at, unfortunately. She's watched all of I Love Lucy. She's watched all of The Cosby Show. I mean, every season, every episode. So she does have a little cartoon that she likes. And, for her, when she comes home from school, it's stressful sometimes. Middle school can be hard. I don't bother her. I let her sit there and watch that cartoon and just laugh and laugh, and it just brings her heart joy. It brings my heart joy. I do finally have to be like, okay, we can't watch it the whole night. we gotta get some things done. So you just explore and think about, what's a healthy distraction for you or for your child and for your family. Grounding. I love this. I actually like the actual thing that's called grounding, or it's called earthing. I went on kind of a wellness kick. I have an autoimmune disease, so I read every book on how to get well. And this is actually something that came up from Dr. Axe and Jordan Rubin, if you know any of them. They're health people in the health world. And, actually what good it is for us to actually take our shoes off, take our socks off, and walk in the grass. When we moved from South Georgia, we had 7 acres. We had this beautiful flat front yard, and I would go out some mornings and just take my socks and shoes off and walk in the wet morning grass. And I made my husband do it. I always make him do these weird experiments. And he loved it. He's like, this is amazing. Think about it. How often do we actually touch the earth? We walk down the sidewalk. We get in our car. We never are actually touching the earth that God created. And they say one of the absolute best ways to do grounding or earthing is, hey, let's do this. Let's all go to the beach, walk along the water and in the sunshine. Get that vitamin D, yes. So I know it sounds crazy if you've never thought about that or tried that, but it actually is amazing to do that. Yes.
I would just add, because I actually use this, we do it once in my class and I do it in my office, some with our kiddos who are actually starting to head towards an anxiety attack. The way we do it there is we focus on our senses. So we go through all our senses, like what are 4 things that you see right now? What are 3 things that you hear right now? What is something that you smell right now? Like we just count down and go through our senses, and they will just say whatever's on their mind, and then I can look at that, and sometimes I have to go through it twice, but usually that's good. Say, you are with me in my office, you are safe right now. They're like, it almost takes the air out of the room, truly, because they're focusing on their senses and where they are presently instead of where their ticker tape in their mind is taking them. And so it just literally grounds them to where they're at, and then we can just talk. Okay, so what's going on? Well, I was not prepared for this test, blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of the why behind that. Yes.
Can you say your countdown again?
Mm-hmm. So you don't have to do them in a certain order. I usually start with what do you see first, like what are 4 things that you see. Then I usually do what do you feel, what do you hear, and then I either do smell or taste, depending. Like sometimes they might be chewing gum or just had a drink or something where I can know that there's going to be an obvious taste. And if not, I do smell because I have a candle in my office. So. And a little waterfall, so there's things that they can pick up on, and a big window, so there's things that they can see. So it's very easy. No matter where you are right now, you could come up with things if we were to do this.
I have an activity I do with the middle schoolers with this as well. I have, those picture calendars of like the mountain majesties or pictures of the beach, and I have a bunch of different ones that I've got, and I'll have the children pick out what's their favorite scenery. Like, where would you want to be right now if you could be anywhere in one of these scenes? Some of it's the beach, some of them it's the mountains, and then we do that sensory thing too, and I give them a copy of that to keep with them if they ever just want to think about that place and that they're in that place where it's just beautiful and they hear the waterfall, just different things like that. So that's something fun you could do if you have an old calendar or something like that. Obviously, the breathing exercises, we're going to tell you about some apps with that. There's the finger breathing where you, if you want to show them, so breathe in, pause, and then breathe out. And then breathe in, pause, and breathe out. It's just very simple, and you've got your hand, and that's a great thing for that. We're also going to talk about some visualization stuff to calm down, and obviously self-compassion, taking care of yourself, finding out, we moved here to, I say, the big city, and like Motion Stretch Studio is awesome for me and my autoimmune stuff, and so I treat myself to that or find out what works for your child. I know some kids just, like girls, might want to just go take a bubble bath, honey. You've had a rough day, just go soak in the bath. Obviously, the spiritual side is a big, huge thing. It could be music for some of your children if they need to just blast some praise and worship music when they're feeling down, anxious. Trying to think of anything else. Obviously, prayer. I know we're running out of time, so I do want to do one activity with you real quick. Yes, I have so much stuff. This book. This is an activity I do, and believe it or not, I did this a year ago when I started learning about this from a Christian counselor. It really helped me relax us to listen to some Christian meditations or imagery, because I'm one of those high-strung people. I have a hard time relaxing. I want to stay busy. But I tried this with my son. I guess last year he would have been 16, and then we had a foster son. He was 17, and said, "Boys, I want you to just relax. I want you." So they like laid on the bed, and I read this to them, and they were almost asleep by the time I was done. So they were very relaxed, and they enjoyed it. And I thought, if like a 17-year-old boy likes this, it must be all right. So.
When I do these lessons with the elementary students, some of them fall asleep at the end. So, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I explain to them that might happen because we want them to relax. And if you experience it, you'll see that it really does slow things down, slows your heart rate down. Remember, your heart rate's activated and your breathing is activated. You want to calm down so that you can talk through it.
Just a sec. Yeah, I also did this with a gym full of middle schoolers last year, and a lot of them did fall asleep because that's the only time they've ever relaxed. Like, they don't even know how to relax. And it just, it brought my heart such joy to just see them just relax. So, okay. What I want you to do is I want everybody, if you feel comfortable, I want you to just, sit. I want you to close your eyes. Just get comfortable in your seat, and I want you to... no snoring. If you want to go ahead and just put your hands in your lap. Just try and totally relax. And what I would normally do, what we don't have time, is what's called progressive muscle relaxation. And we have a handout for you back there where you're thinking about each muscle and slowly just relaxing each muscle is what we would do first. So go ahead and relax. Close your eyes and bring yourself to a calm, quiet place in your mind. Now transport yourself to a favorite spot on the beach. Maybe this is a beach you have been to before, or maybe one you have seen in a picture or movie. Imagine yourself there. On the beach, you feel the lapping of the waves against your toes while you dig. The sun shines brightly and gently warms your skin. Feel the gentle rhythm of the waves flow over the sand. It calms you. Notice how your breathing becomes calm and even. Inhale and exhale, slowly and calmly. Paying attention now, you slow down your breathing even further and allow your muscles to relax. Feel the warmth of the sun melting your muscles into complete relaxation. Slowly and easily, your body relaxes more and more, releasing tension, releasing any anger, releasing any self-doubt. Inhaling deeply again, breathe in calm and peacefulness. Your body is now relaxed. Your mind is now relaxed. Release all of your worries, concerns, or thoughts that have been bothering you. Just enjoy this moment you have now. Right now, only this matters. Breathe in deeply and allow deep relaxation to flow to any part of your body that needs it. Imagine the beautiful golden sun penetrating every cell and muscle, making you feel fantastic. You feel a growing sense of peace and know that everything is all right. Take in a deep breath again and bring your attention back to the present moment, along with all the calm, peaceful feelings of relaxation and rest. You now feel energized and peaceful. You can now open your eyes. I hope that felt great. Open your eyes. I have on the back table there, my favorite one is I think it's called the White House, and it's on the beach, and that's the one that puts people to sleep. So there you go.
Imagine giving your child the gift of what she just gave you. How many of you felt perfect peace right there? Just raise your hand and be honest if you felt it. Yeah, good. And I think that we need to take that opportunity from time to time to give our kids that. We've got several more slides, but let me pop up the next one if you wouldn't mind, Matthew, just to show them. You guys are gonna receive a copy of all of this. We're not gonna read through these. We don't have time because I wanna give you time for Q&A. But those tips for parents, there's a lot of different tips in there that'll give you some tips and tricks, some walkaways that you can take to help your kids navigate through this. You know, we get so caught up with the end in mind in terms of who are our kids going to be and what do we need to push them. And one of the things that Dr. DeMore talks about is the disappointment whip. And she says, you got to put the disappointment whip away. Because when you think about those grades that come, and I'm not saying you don't hold your kids accountable to do the things that they need to do, but it's how you approach them once they've disappointed you. Let me tell you something. One of the things that I don't want my middle school teachers to ever say, I'm disappointed in that last grade that you just got. You can do better. Look, trust me, they're going to get it from you. They're going to get it from everybody. We need to help them to get there. But the disappointment whip and the way that we communicate with them, I think it's so important about how we can approach them with certain things like this. Praise the kid who struggles through a class with a difficult teacher. Maybe, you know, personalities are different, right? They're going to come in contact with college instructors and classroom teachers where there's a personality conflict. It's just not working out. Never here at North Cobb Christian. But praise them for the kids that can navigate that can grit through that, because they're going to run into people in their life that are going to disappoint them, right? What about praising the kid who knows? I'm trying to read my writing here. Who has to slog through just a difficult situation, and they do it in a way that surprises you. Praise them for that. Praise them for their ability to adapt to that. So often we give them a pass, and we try to be that lawnmower parent that tries to come in and mow those obstacles down and get that. But we've got to give them, like Carol said, we've got to give them those opportunities to strive and get through that. Another thing that it says on here is get real about motivation and what motivates kids. We talked at the very beginning of this that they have to have joy to be the learners that they need to be. So we need to get real about how we motivate them, and we need to make sure that we're giving them the right kind of motivation and fascinate them. That's what their educational experience needs to be. It needs to be fascination, and this is the message for the teachers. Fascination. And we want them to be curious learners. These are the kinds of things that look, there's a lot of people that believe that it's IQ that's going to help them to be successful and reach their end goals. At the end of the day, it has nothing to do with IQ, and studies show this. It's about being joyful in their experiences. Your parents probably told you this after their situation, but find a job where you feel like, I never had to work a day in my life because I love my job so much. And they need those are the kind of experiences, that's the kind of personal testimony that they have to have in order for them to feel like they're being able to manage life well. And so often our kids are expected to be driven to do X, Y, and Z. I've got a book on the back out there. It's where you go. This is for how many high school parents? One more time. Okay. Have you heard of the book Where You Go Is Not Who You Are? So often the pressure for our kids in high school is where am I going is going to determine who I am. It has nothing to do with who you are. You know, and that's why we tell them on a regular basis, you're a child of the King. And their self-worth needs to come from their ability to look in the mirror and be satisfied with who they see. And helping them to navigate anxiety is a part of that process and that path. There's a lot of resources that we have for you, and there you go. Thank you, sir. There's a lot of resources on the back that you can take a look at, and we've got a lot of those resources listed here on the PowerPoint presentation. We skipped through it just because we want to give you guys a little bit of time to ask a couple questions. Any specific questions that perhaps our time together today has drawn out? Anything? Yeah.
It's not something that you guys ever had said, but I think that this is an important aspect, especially for girls, as they are going through their hormonal changes, that a lot of times they're completely fine human beings until they hit puberty. Not to mention the boys aren't also, but there's a little bit of a different hormonal thing that's going on with them. So while they are going through these hormonal changes, and then also as they are, that the anxiety or the stress levels or their whatever is important to them at that time frame is like exponentially exploding. And as a parent, you're sort of like that outside buffer, or you try to feed them properly and get them to good sleep and all of those healthy things so they can help manage those things. What you say as a parent may not be like that effective, or they may not want to take care of themselves or go to bed on time or things like that. But have you come across in your line of work that there are things that are sort of pinpoint these issues with young women during different times so that we can help them manage the stress that sort of accumulates during these 2 weeks during every month?
I know they all.
The women in the room here, we've got it all under control. We're talking about the young women.
I think the fear of the unknown for my daughter, there was a great book, I'll have to send it out to you, I can't remember that. It was a Christian book about puberty, and it answered all her questions. And it is, I mean, you might want to look through it first, but it's from a Christian perspective. And so I think when you talked about the first one, she knew, like, I'm crying for no reason, that's okay. There doesn't have to be a reason for me to cry right now, because that's just part of my, she used to call them hormones or whatever, but so I think that's a big step, is just having the knowledge that you're not crazy, I promise. So that's a big help. And there's one for boys too. It's like your body book, but you gotta get the Christian one. My son also took that away and he, read it in his room when he was, Yeah.
There's another one. Sorry, another book called Almost 12. Have you guys ever heard of that book? Obviously, it's important to help kids navigate that puberty piece for all of you middle school parents that are out there. But it's a book. It's a Christian book that was created, and they continue. It's been around for a long time, but it helps them to become very familiar with their sexuality and with the changes that they're going through, and in the Christian, with a very awesome Christian tint that I think you guys could benefit from too. So Almost 12 is the name of that book.
I would just add that in regards to our hormones, the same way as when we're experiencing severe anxiety, knowledge is power. And when you know what's going on, one of my own kids was in tears one day, and we had that's hormones talk. Like, I don't know why I'm crying. And it was like, oh, and the next time it happened, they were able to go, Mom, I'm having hormones. I'm like, all right, let's do this, but they knew what was going on. It's that feeling of loss of control that can be really scary for our kids.
Can you also just kind of talk about at what point to try to get others involved? Because I think that's always a big thing of, not waiting so long, what things to look for, because I think that's a really big deal that people don't get help soon enough. And even the idea of for our own family, it's been a godsend to be here, because we have so many fabulous people who have fed into our children and have made all the difference, because there's times they don't want to talk to their parents, they don't want, and they need that other person that they can go to. So maybe just kind of when to take those steps.
I would say anytime that it's starting to affect their daily living. So it's affecting their eating habits, their sleeping habits. If you see a severe change in social, usually it's withdrawal that happens, or extreme perfectionism. That's the other way that it's gone awry very quickly. Like one of those where it's affecting their physical life, then we've kind of passed the point of, this is normal teenage anxiety, normal hormones. This is something where we need some support. And I absolutely agree, whether it's staff here at the school or aunts and uncles, when my kids need to speak to someone other than me, I pray for the trusted adults that they're going to go to. That's very important.
I would also say there are some people who have a very high tolerance and they're able to push through, but they're miserable. And so there are some kids, then you can tell, you know, your child just has no joy. They've lost their joy. I would say that's a good time also to see if you can seek help.
So I have children in all realms of our school, and high school. So and I know Ms. Rivera gets to like go in the classrooms and do counseling lessons with the kids. I don't know in middle school how much we get that, but have we friendships, learning how to maneuver friendships, and all of that is a huge source of anxiety in middle school, and specifically in the lunchroom. And have we ever thought about somehow getting you and the counseling staff more involved with these kids to help them learn how to cope with all these new social skills that are very overwhelming to them?
Yes, that's a big part of school counseling is, and I say you get more bang for the buck. I mean, I can see individual kids on and on, but I don't have enough time to do that. So I love the classroom guidance lessons that we do. And I don't know if y'all got the PowerPoint we sent out earlier. I did one with all the girls except 8th grade because they seem to not be struggling as bad, but Kingdom Girl versus Castle Girl. So we kind of talked about that, and actually I love to give real life skills. I give them actual sentences they can use if they're in a situation, because I think sometimes I just don't know what to say. Like, I don't know, especially if they're not real assertive. I mean, some girls are big, you know, like, you better stop, or, you know, but some of them just needed actual words to use, and that did get sent out with, I think, in the flight plan when I did that. But I'm going to be back in the classroom next week with actually the 5th grade girls, and we're going to be talking about some body image stuff, and again, how we're dealing with one another and how we need to, how we're all God's masterpiece, and yes, we need to see ourselves as a masterpiece, but we also need to build each other up to see that everybody is a masterpiece. So, yes.
Didn't the middle school team, didn't they sort of like move all the kids around and do an assigned table for a little while?
That was last year, yeah.
I thought that was, so the feedback from my Gracie for that was like, it was weird. I was put at a table with a bunch of people. I didn't really have a lot of stuff in common, but I really got to know other people, and it was really good. So it was uncomfortable, but at the same time, I thought that a lot of kids, the feedback that grew from that. I don't know if you guys got the same feedback, but I thought it was a really great experiment, and even adults have to do that, get at different tables so they can learn how to hang out with other people. Are you guys going to do it again? Is it going to be a regular thing?
No, I appreciate that. We had 10 kids not enrolled because of that activity. No, I'm just kidding. No, seriously. We're always looking for different ways, and sometimes we may skip a year between those activities and do something differently. One of the things that we do is a kindness challenge, and that's something that we do on a regular basis. And the kindness challenge is very specifically, here's the deal. When it comes to social emotional, one of the workshops that I just went to said that a teacher who greets the children at the door as they're coming in, that their students are 33.3% more effective at what they do that day. Why would that be? Because it's the joy that they have walking in, which shows, to your point, why the social emotional is so important, which is why we spend so much time talking about the condition of the heart and the mirror that they see, for them to be satisfied in themselves, so they're not constantly comparing, because that comparison is the thief of joy. In middle school, it's the killjoy. So that's an important piece that we have to remember. We got time for one more question. It's all right. I know. Yes, ma'am.
At the high school level, and it probably is important too at the middle school level, one of the things that we've been really trying to balance is the idea of, as you become an adult, being able to go to people when you're having an issue. Whether that even an adult, going to your teacher, but doing it in a respectful way, so that you can go in, because if there is a challenge, there's always going to be challenges. How do I approach that person? What language do I use You know, maybe something in that kind of helping them, because, you know, I've also been trying to talk, it's like, it's not always good to go directly at someone. Like, you gotta, you know, even if you're having an issue specifically with that person about something, sometimes kind of just being broad about your, you know, helping them kind of manage that, because it's just getting to be a bigger thing, and especially as they go off to college or whatever, or jobs, they're gonna have to be able to say, I'm gonna stick up for myself. I'm gonna say something's not right here, but, you know, teaching them how to do it in a way that is still respectful, and what words to use and how to approach people when that goes on. That's kind of something we're going through.
I mean, absolutely. I think at some point or another, we all navigate that. And some kids do it at home with their parents, and some kids will come say, you know, I'm having a trouble with so-and-so, and they, can you believe they gave me this grade? Gave me this grade. I didn't deserve this grade. They gave it to me. Okay, so tell me what happened. Okay, so maybe that's something you want to talk to your teacher about. Let's talk about how to do that, right? I will say, like, in the classroom, I absolutely love when my kids advocate for themselves. And if I can, if there's room for wiggle, I'm going to wiggle in their favor, because I love that they took the time and are invested enough or curious enough. How could I improve this? Oh my goodness. That's like, oh, teacher moment, you know? And sometimes there's not. Like, it's very clear that this theorist, this was his theory, not this other guy, and I'm sorry. But the fact that you came to ask about it, let's talk about that so that next time we can improve. So definitely an important skill. Are you asking how we can do it en masse?
Yeah, have maybe some phrases that they can learn to use, how to kind of go about it, maybe giving them some words. Because I think sometimes, again, it's the thing of, I don't know what words to use.
Right.
I don't know, you know, and I, you know, even with my middle schooler, understanding you're not talking to another middle schooler.
Right.
Like, you're talking to an adult now, and how you're approaching this, you aren't going to be in that same, you know, mindset. So I need you to kind of figure out. So maybe just giving them some phrases or words to start those conversations sometimes might be helpful.
I would always say, like, the first thing that comes to mind is, I didn't understand this, or I don't know what I did wrong on this. Could you explain this to me?
Right.
Because then you're coming very humbly, and you're allowing that it's not an attack, and you're allowing the teacher time to explain how we got where we got.
And what I use with lower school, but it works across the board, and it's very simple. If you can look up iMessages, and we've done a couple of lessons. I don't know if the kids have come home and shared with you about iMessages. But it's a really simple formula. You never attack the person that you're talking to. This works with peers. You state how you feel, because you can't argue with what you're feeling. So I feel frustrated, I feel confused, I feel sad, I feel left out. Because, and then I train them on how to talk very neutrally about what happened. Explain what happened in neutral terms. And then, you know, I want and need blank. So you coach them through that process, and you help them discover what they might not even know what they're wanting or needing from the conversation, and that's really important. What are you asking of the other person? And then we talk through, you know, that has to be a reasonable request. You can't ask them not to play with someone else, or, you know. So we coach them through that, and we let them have practice, and we kind of screen them, and we're like, okay, well, that's a great example. They learn from each other. So that works just about with anything, you know, sharing what you want or you need or how you felt about something.
I'll say really quick with my kids, and I'm not a specialist by any means, but one of the words that stands out to me of all of them, the most important, is avoidance. I feel like there's just a huge cultural push to almost avoid conflict. It's not natural for people.
Right.
And starting from a 1-year-old to 2-year-old all the way up to adults, we don't like conflict because it disturbs us inside. So I think teaching children and even adults to be okay with conflict and become comfortable with it. So for my 8-year-old, you know, the I things, you know, I feel this, I feel that, explaining to her that 9 times out of 10, you know, conflict that you think is going on between you, if it's socially, it's a misunderstanding. Like, they didn't intend for you to feel that way. Right. But if you avoid addressing it, then it's not giving them the opportunity to explain it, to then correct how you're feeling. So really like honing in on kids not avoiding the conflict, being able to speak up with how they feel, because it does give the other person the opportunity to then explain, you know, the meaning behind what they said, etc. So I don't know, avoidance just is a big word that I think kids do and kind of need to be pushed through to not do that.
I like what you said about helping to give them the words, and that's been a large part of that end topic that we talked about, give them a voice. And it's harder and harder in this culture to give them a voice because they're not having to use their own. Everything has been digital, and they're not having to have those interactions. Here's the truth. This is how much time they've got to deal with life. This is how much time, this little piece right here, that's all you get to help equip them for all of this. So we've got to really, and I appreciate that visual so much. It makes me depressed, actually. But yeah.
You were sharing with avoidance, and another thing I feel like that you talk about conflict, or it makes me sad. And I'm just share a basic example. You know, it's harder for people to do the right thing because they think, like, just like a passerby, something happens, or a car wreck, you're like, nah, you know, I'm gonna keep going, and we do that as adults, and sometimes I see that we do it kids. And, you know, I've got multiple kids, and they're all in different levels, and I think the biggest thing is that sometimes other people don't have the voice, but to give your kids the okay, and that it is the okay, and not to feel guilty about doing what's right and speaking up for those who may not have a voice. And you know, one of mine yesterday got a call and she was just crying, and I'm like, why is she crying? Was she involved? No, she was afraid, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it was almost like she was afraid. She spoke up, and it just, I think, we didn't talk about it anymore, but no, she was scared maybe she got in trouble because she spoke up and
she did the right thing.
And she did the right thing, and you know, there's just been multiple things that, I mean, I have a son who just is not able to speak up for himself. He's trying, and it's hard, but in the last 4 years, I could not have done it without my village of teachers, without peers that have the guts to stand up and do the right thing, because that used to be our norm, and now in society it's like, no, don't get involved, and just let those negative things happen without having that constant standing up. So, you know, you're not getting in trouble, and I want them to feel like they did the right thing and not feel guilty about that.
That's right. It's a shame that our culture today is becoming to move further and farther away from doing the right thing so that we can be comfortable. And because of the stress that grows, we don't want them to experience the anxiety of having to deal with the fact that maybe friends will walk away from them if they do the right thing.
And
we can't be that
teach
way.
our kids that, you know what, they're not your friend.
That's right.
And learn to let that go and not be with that cool crowd if that's what you think is that in crowd.
That's right.
Just so long as you were able to stand your ground, then that continues on into adulthood. You know, I'll keep telling my kids, surround yourself with people that make you be the best version of you.
That's right.
And if they bring you down with that, then you need to internally, like, digest it. Maybe I shouldn't be hanging around. And again, starting from lower school, you know, all the way up through on to college, and hopefully that will guide them through their life journey of just following their path and set their goals.
And what an amazing journey it is. And that's the role of each and every one of you, is to express to them how amazing this journey is, that God has put them on this planet for such a time like this to be amazing young people, to do those things. But you got to remember, moms, and it's maybe the reason why some of you are here, you've got to be able to do it first, because they're looking at their models. They're looking at their models. So that's right. Did you enjoy today? Good. I'm glad to hear that. Listen, you're very welcome. Our goal was to have another one of these in May, and it was to very specifically to talk on the topics from a medical perspective, a medical professional that was going to come up and that was going to share with her associate we talked a little bit about physiology today. helping parents to understand the physiology of this behavior and the hormones and all of that, so that you guys will be able to take them into the summer and deal with them for 10 weeks.
We could send you for a summer camp.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Hey, thank you so much for being here. You guys are awesome. Thank you for your participation and for your vulnerability. All right, take care. Have a great day.